Ooh-ay. New wave. New wave. New wave. New wave. Going to a party. Hello everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. I know we have people in our midst from all around the world. And just want to extend a welcome. And also, again, a warning. COVID-19, coronavirus. Make sure that you are protecting yourselves and being vigilant at all times. Wearing facial protection. It covers the nose and the mouth. Don't forget the nose. Make sure that you're keeping your conversations to a minimum, even with a mask if you're in a public setting. If not for yourself, for the sake of others. Also, condolences to the people who have passed during this time, as well as big ups and big shouts and get well soons in the largest extent to all the people who are currently ill and in different states of illness due to COVID-19 and in sickness in general. But I hope you are on the path to full recovery and get well soon. What was the piece? Oh yeah, make sure you're practicing social distancing and physical distancing. Yes, it is still an issue. Even though your state might be relaxing rules and you can go to the beach, it's still not safe. So don't be lulled into letting your guard down. Even if you do go out, please make sure that you're protecting yourself. And shout out to the essential workers who have to go out to provide the services to make sure that we who are able to stay out of the way are able to stay out of the way. Cool. So let's talk about what my post was today, which is actually yesterday. I posted up on this. My post was, I hope that in 100 years that there are no black people in America. Not because we were driven into extinction and even to add on to that, or forced to leave, but we found a better place to live. And I mean that. First, let me say, first of all, I mean that. I'm not just saying that. It's not just to add into the context of what's going on. Like, I really mean that. And I plan on devoting the majority of the rest of my life to bringing that into fruition. What does that mean? So you get a lot of responses. I got a response from like some Nazi who's wearing the suit of a dead army. Of a man who shot himself in a bunker, whose total plan of global domination lasted for a few months, maybe a couple years, and lost every single battle that he fought after a certain period of time. But that's the suit and the logo that you choose to adorn your body with, the logo of losers, where I would just wear the Chicago Bulls jersey as my logo. Much more powerful, much more successful than the swastika. But I got a ton of responses from different people, different reactions. People agreed, people didn't agree. And what I want to do in this piece today, I want to talk on two things. Some that I mentioned yesterday on the chat about policing and how that has generated some type of response and engagement over the past 24 hours, and to even clarify that stance, and to add on to that stance. And then I want to talk about, just in general, this concept of hashtag strategic exodus, right? So again, that post was, in 100 years, I hope that there are no more black people in America, not because we've been driven into extinction, but because we found a better place to live. Hashtag strategic exodus. And so I want to kind of talk about that as well and field some questions and some different ideas and actually present to you a certain level of challenge in that. But a different way. Now what you think. So first, on the policing side, I mentioned yesterday that I think that we're at a point now where it's been proven that the policing model that we have now is inadequate for the sake of safety and security. It is not a holistic practice. It is not a holistic program. It is very much so a monolithic piece, route with corruption and folks who are really there to be authoritarian and not necessarily be of service to the community. Being of service in the community is not just catching criminals. Being of service to community is also being there to make sure that the community has a sense of safety and security, whether there's criminals there or not. You don't need criminality isn't a direct correlation to things being insecure or unsafe, because there's different levels to criminality. It's a difference if you have some wild axe murderer running through the streets, Halloween style, versus some white collar crime or something like that, or somebody running running a stop sign is very dangerous. You actually should be getting reprimanded for that. Don't run stop signs or stoplights. And I also, in the midst of this, I want you to look at my face and look at my presence. I'm still humorous. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I'm not vengeful. I'm still the same me, right? But I am tired. I'm tired of this. So my response yesterday to this was there needs to be a new model of policing that out innovates, out entrepreneurs, out profits, that outdoes the current system of policing, to make the current system obsolete, right? To take away their jobs, not by getting police arrested, not by getting people thrown off the force, not by changing laws, right, to get police to behave better overall, not to set up some type of initiative to get the good cops to stand up against the bad cops. I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about create a separate institution that outcompetes them, that does their job at 10x to the point where they can't compete, right? Using a model, if you look at a disruptive model, if you want to be techie about it. And what does that look like, right? And what is the process towards that? And what is the schedule and the timeline that we're doing? We already have enough reasons. We got Ahmaud Arbery. We got George Floyd. We got LaShonda. There's a list of names, right, of people who have been destroyed by the current model of policing. And there's no way to fix it, right? All of these kind of inclusivity and training models and all these different things, they don't work. There are police officers who don't know how to handle a gun. There's police officers who don't have, just innately, they are not sociable people, and they're in positions where you have to be social. If you're a beat cop, you have to be social. If you're in a cruiser and you're in uniform, you have to be social. You're not an undercover cop. You're not a detective, right, where you're coming after the fact to figure things out, or you're operating under some type of guise to get people to buy into a role that you're playing. I'm talking about street cops in uniform, right? You're a social, that's a social job, first and foremost, right? And if you don't know how to be social, then you shouldn't have that job, right? Try and go be a detective, go be undercover, go do something else, but you do not need to be on the streets. A little backstory about this. So I have multiple family in law enforcement, just so we understand. I have a tradition of law enforcement in my family. I have blue blood in my veins. My father was a deputy state police at one point when that was still allowed, where you could be deputized in the state of Illinois. You can either look at crime two ways. You can either look at crime as breaking the law, as a sign of breaking the law. Crime is breaking the law. You can look at it that way. Or you can look at crime as a sign of a lack of services. And depending on how you look at crime will dictate how you look at policing. If you look at crime as simply being a breaking of the law, here's a book of laws. When you break these, that's crime, and that's it. If you look at it as crime as being a sign of a lack of services, then things start to change very drastically, very dramatically. Things get very objective very quickly, right? You have to have a certain level of nuance and a certain level of understanding, but you can identify what's happening, right? Some people commit crime because they're bored. Or if you're bored, it means you have nothing to do. And potentially it might be that you lack certain services in your community that give you something to do, to give you a pastime, right? Something to spend your time with, right? America can be a very boring place, right? Once you start leaving the cities and you start to go into these different places or you go into different neighborhoods, it's boring, right? There's no stimulation. There's no aesthetic stimulation. There has been no education to appreciate just nature in and of itself. And this is important when we go back to what happened in Central Park, right? There's no real systems to teach you to enjoy the minor things in life and either the major things in life. And you're not presented with any type of aesthetic challenge. There's nothing that cognitively challenges you. It is all made very easy and convenient. You have a bunch of convenience stores in your neighborhood, but not a bunch of gardens or things that require a certain level of input. So it can get boring. The hood is boring, right? That's why you have certain people who are trained in certain disciplines or have certain appreciations. They're getting out of the hood, not because they're scared, right? They might be the most gangster dude of all time or gangster female of all time. It's because it's boring. And the things that you have to do, right? It's music and there's other things like, yeah, but overall, this is just kind of band-aids on the overall boredom. And some people in that boredom, in addition to poverty, which we'll get into, but in addition to the boredom as a main driver, a very basic driver of why people will commit a crime, and you could tack it to where there's a lack of things to do. How often do they say these kids join gangs because there's nothing to do? There's no after school program. There's no this. There's no that. And what are a lot of approaches try and solve that? If people implement these programs, these after school programs, or let's build a gym, or let's do this, or let's get the kids involved in boxing, let's do all these different kind of activities, right? Services, right? And to deter people from committing crime out of boredom. Poverty, people commit crime out of poverty because they're in need. They need something, right? I need food, right? I need to pay my bills. I need. In the face of a lack of services, lack of meaningful employment, right? Lack of some type of communal efforts to handle the financial affairs of people in certain vicinities, in certain places, right? There's no catch-all mechanisms, right? To help people who aren't able to pay a bill or be late on something or to groceries or something in that capacity, right? There's a lack of a service to help provide that. And then the services that are there, things like welfare, some of them aren't dignified, right? It's not a dignified existence, right? You have a whole community of people, black, white, whatever, who look down on that, right? Who want to provide the service with a caveat, right? With a certain level of, because I'm giving you this to help you, now you got to do what I say do. You have to behave in a certain way. You have to buy a certain thing. You have to live by a certain set of rules. So you're not really giving them a service, right? Services are no strings attached. So what you're really giving them is subserviency. You're not giving them service. You're giving them subserviency, right? They have to submit to your will, right? Which unravels and undoes the whole point of it, right? There are some people like, I don't want to be on welfare because I don't want somebody giving me something because they're going to look down on me, right? So you're basically just trapped in this same cycle, right? And then there's a plethora of other things underneath that as to why people commit crimes that you can tag to a lack of services. And if you really just invested in the services, right? If you gave the services a certain dignity, then you would eliminate a lot of people's points of views, right? You eliminate a lot of the incentivizations for people to get involved in the life of crime, where you wouldn't need police to be there in the first place, right? So it's at the fundamentals, the roots. How did I come upon this kind of understanding, right? It's always good to play in metaphor. I am a metaphorist. I am a lyricist. I play in metaphor. I was born into metaphor. I have an understanding of metaphor. I made my money off metaphor. My career is based on metaphor. So I have a thorough understanding of allegory, metaphor, mapping certain instances onto other instances to find a certain level of meaning or for a certain level of analysis to get into the details. So I want to take y'all back to a nice, fun story that kind of proves this out. This idea of the fundamentals and how you look at something. If you look at crime as being breaking the law, that'll lead you down one path. If you look at crime as being a lack of services, it tends to send you down another path, right? So some of y'all know back a few years ago, I got the opportunity to play a very highly competitive game of Street Fighter. Street Fighter is a video game. It's a fighting game. And I've been playing Street Fighter since my first introduction to it I was probably in kindergarten or the early years of my school. And there was a store the corner store up the street from the school that I went to. It's just like a block away. And before school would start, we would line up outside. But you had the opportunity, if you had some change, to go to the corner store and get some cookies or whatever for whatever, right? Some candy, whatever. And they had arcade machines in there. And one of the machines that they had was Street Fighter 2. And I remember just being blown away, like just watching, playing. It's like, oh, you okay? You could just sit there and watch the game, just play. If you didn't even have any money, it was just to sit there and look at it and, be like, wow, that's great. In addition to being a martial artist, right? So it's fighting, it's martial arts. Like, oh, he's doing kicks, he's throwing punches. Like, oh man, he's got another black belt. This is great. So I started to play Street Fighter almost through my entire life, right? And I got good in certain areas on certain games. They come out with different versions. And, it's always something that's been with me. Like some people play chess, some people play basketball. Like I was like, I play video games and I play Street Fighter and I play these other games. But, I love me some Street Fighter. And we had various machines. In our karate school, we had an arcade machine of Street Fighter. So it's always been a part of me. And I've always like kind of tapped into it. I never knew how deep the competitive space of Street Fighter actually went. For me, I always just played video games just on the surface, right? I played video games as a metaphor, right? I play video games as just like, here's something that I can relate to. I just want the dude who throws the fireball and got the cool looking kicks. And, I don't really care about doing the combos or anything like that. I just want to throw a fireball and do this and do that. I was playing it for the metaphor, for the music, for the sounds, for the Hadouken, for the colors. I want this color uniform. I never understood that there was a whole other side to Street Fighter. So fast forward a lot of years, to about 2016, I think is when this took place. You come to find out like, oh, there's these video game tournaments. There's all these different players from different parts of the world who like really are really, really good at it. And it's like, oh, wow. And you find this one guy who's considered to be the king, right? He's doing things in Street Fighter when you look at it like this is amazing. It's impossible, right? I want to just look at this dude. I want to play like that dude. Like that dude is like the best. I want to be like him. And somebody asked me on Twitter, there's a video game competition called EVO. They hold it in Vegas. It's massive. It's the largest video game competition in the world, but it's for fighting games. And they bring in players from all over the world. And there was a moment, and EVO's been around for a decade or more. And there was early in EVO's history, there's something called Moment 37. Moment 37 is you have these two players, Justin Wong, who's American, and you have Daigo Umihara, who's from Japan. And Daigo Umihara, they're playing a version of Street Fighter Alpha or something like, Third Strike or something like that. And Daigo's getting beat. Justin's kind of getting the best of him. And he's kind of going in for the kill. And Daigo proceeds to do something called Moment 37. That's what they call it now. Where Justin Wong does this super move. And he goes and he does like all these kicks and all these punches. And even if you block, it still takes damage. And Daigo's damage was so low that Even if he blocked just probably one of these hits or two, he was dead. But what Daigo does instead of blocking, he does something called parrying, right? And when you parry, you basically tap the joystick forward. When you block, you press back and you block, but when you parry, you press forward. So you got to lean into the attacks. Daigo parried every single strike. And not only did he parry every single strike on the ground, in the air, he was able to do his own super move and eventually killed Justin Wong. Shout out to Justin Wong, who's a good dude. And shout out to Daigo, who's a good dude. And killed him. And it was so mind-blowing that he did this, that it is still probably one of the top moments in all of video game history. Period. Right? This one move from this one player at this one tournament became the top. It really should go down as one of the top 10 sports moments of all time, right? The top, from rope-a-dope to like up there with Muhammad Ali. Like, that's how crazy it is. So fast forward, the people who run that tournament reached out to me on Twitter, just very casually. I'm talking mess about how I play Street Fighter, but one of the managers of the tournament reached out to me and said, "Hey, Lupe, do you watch Evo?" And I said, "Yeah, but I only watch it to watch Daigo," right? And he says, at the time he was working for, well, I think his name is Mark Man, but Mark, he was working, I think, for maybe not for Evo at that time when he hit me, definitely now, but he was working for the joystick company that sponsors Daigo. And he said, "Hey, do you want to fight Daigo?" And I said, "Absolutely." Right? I would love to lose to this dude. It would be an honor just to lose to him, right? That's like, hey, do you want to go 10 rounds? Do you want to go 30 seconds in the ring with Floyd Mayweather? Yes, right? He has to wear the biggest gloves. He has to basically wrap pillows around his hands. But yes, I want to be able to say I boxed with Floyd Mayweather Jr. Yes. Do you want to play a 21 with Michael Jordan? Yes. I don't even play basketball, but yes. Do you want to go with Lionel Messi and just do a shoot around, a penalty kick with yes. Would you want to be the GOAT? Yes, I do. I don't care if I have to play. I don't know how to play. I'm going to learn how to play. And so what I did, I accepted the invitation, and I didn't know what game we were playing. I didn't know what version of Street Fighter we were playing. So I think I was on tour. I immediately went to the nearest GameStop or whatever and bought a PlayStation, bought the latest version of Street Fighter, and just started to play, right? A game that I hated to play. Just practicing. I'm posting up my training methodology, and people are laughing at me. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna get killed." Da, 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 da. I'm watching Daigo's matches. I'm watching matches of other players. I'm watching documentaries, and I start to learn something. I learned that people like Daigo, people like Justin, people like Alex Valle, all these people who you may not have ever heard of, who are the Michael Jordans and the Scottie Pippens and the Kevin Garnetts and the Muhammad Alis of their sport, of their craft, playing Street Fighter, playing fighting games. These dudes, they're not playing the game, right? You say, what? They're not playing the game, right? The lowercase g game, lowercase GAME. They're not playing that. They're not playing Street Fighter. It's like, what is this? This is baffling, right? They're playing the game, capital G. They're not playing the metaphor, which is what I grew up playing, which is what I understood Street Fighter to be. This metaphor of martial arts and fireballs and colors and nice sound effects. And that's what I'm playing. And competing and beating someone and playing beating the person next to you. They're not even playing the person next to them. You say, what? That's crazy. What are you talking about? Like, no, they're not playing Street Fighter. They're not playing the game, lowercase g, and they're not even playing the person that's sitting next to them. What they're doing is they're playing the game, capital G A M E. They're playing the mechanics of the game. They're not playing the colors. They're not even, and when I say this, I want to be very clear because it is a subtle understanding. I don't want people to get lost in what I'm saying by using the same word to talk about two different things. They're playing the game mechanics. And the person that they're playing, they're not playing Daigo or Justin. They're playing the game mechanics that Daigo is playing. So these dudes, they're not there for the fireballs. They could literally play this game with no sound, with no colors, with no characters, just stick figures. Because what they see when they play is they see boxes. They see boxes and they see a clock. But they're not even looking at the clock of the countdown. So 99 seconds, 98 seconds. They're not even playing that. They're playing the time that it takes for one box to go into another box. And the time it takes for this box to transform into another box. So they're playing hitboxes. And when you think about that, it's like it doesn't, like, they're accessing the deep fundamentals. They're not playing this metaphor, right? And that's why they're so good. That's why they're the best. That's why some of them are unbeatable. That's why they can sit and play 1,000 games and win 1,000 games out of 1,000 games. Because they're not even playing the game. They're operating on the layers behind what we just see as the metaphor, behind the eye candy and the nice sounds and the interesting artwork. They're not even in that. They're playing behind that. So they're playing with the fundamentals. And I got to play Daigo. And I learned this, studying this through the part. And I knew that I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do that. I can't understand frame data. I don't have the time. Well, I was so busy all these years trying to just be able to throw a Hadouken or do some type of special move that I didn't even think about that these things actually were just animations and they operated at a certain frame rate and there was frames of animation, and that if you were able to slow down and see and really analyze how much time passes between this move and that move, or this piece of animation and that piece of animation, and then there's something that activates at a very specific point in that. And if you're able to operate on that level, nobody can beat you. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter who you play. So it doesn't matter when I say they're not playing them, because they don't matter. It's only when you're at a certain level that you're playing people who understand this, where then it becomes other things are allowed to get in. But if you're not able to understand frame data, if you're not able to understand all of these kind of transitions between animations, you'll never beat these dudes. No matter how good you think you are, no matter what you do, you'd have to unpack everything that you do and start to just play this game as stick figures, right? And there's people who pick certain characters specifically because that specific character has a certain advantage in its frame data. Not because the way she looks or he looks or the special move that he or she does. They're not playing to entertain themselves. They're playing to win. Right? And the way to win this game undoubtedly, right, to be completely impenetrable, is you can't play this game as a metaphor. You have to play this game as an objective piece of animation. So I got to play fast forward. I do all this training. I realize that is what this is. And I have this epiphany. And I'm like, I can't beat this dude. So I'm just going to play just for the sake of playing and being able to say that I was able to play one of the greats. And through this process, I learned a valuable set of lessons. And it was reinforced later by a brother named Gutex, who wrote a book on it, who wrote a book on the fundamentals of fighting games. And it is that. It don't start with, hey, make sure you pick the character that you really like, or make sure you pick the character that has the nicest hair, the nicest color, or the nicest sounds, or this. Like, pick the character who has the best frame data advantage. That's who you pick. You might not like him. You might not like the way he or she looks. You might not even know how to play them. But if you're able to operate at that level, then you have a fighting chance at the level at which you're playing. Come back to the Daigo match. I beat him. Right? People are going crazy. People are like, yo, this is it's fixed. It's rigged. Daigo was tired. You got lucky. XYZ, blah, 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 blah. It's like, nah, none of that's true. And if it was true, I wasn't in on it. So I'm still, because I'm not aware of it, it's still not true to me. I'm still playing as I play, ready to die. Like, I know I'm finna get killed. And I don't know any of this frame data stuff. And actually, this is the first day that I've actually played this version of the game. But right before I played Daigo, I lost 14 times in a row to the dude that was upstairs, who was just introducing me to the mechanics of the game, who was one of the devs of the game. I couldn't touch him. Destroyed me. So I was like, oh, I've already lost. Y'all recognize that I'm not really good at this. So I don't have any fear now. I'm just go down here and just have fun. And I'm just go down here and play. I'm not even trying to access the deeper layers of this game. I'm gonna just play. And I beat him. Without having an understanding of, with an understanding of the mechanics, but understanding that at this moment, I have not done enough preparation or enough training in that specific area to beat him without playing the game. Now I just have to just go wild and be completely unpredictable and not fit into a model or a mold and just have fun, right? And smile and laugh and, didn't even realize that I won because I just wanted to keep playing against a dude who to me is a legend. And I beat him. After the fact of that, I go to a video game competition called E3. It's a video game kind of expo. And all of the pro fighters now, all of the pros, everybody's talking smack, they're talking trash. Everybody's like, yo, da da da. They feel like some people are taking it to the extreme, like you've made our sport look stupid and da 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 da. I was like, man, I was just having fun. So they line up at E3 to beat me. And I go to E3 and I lose every single match to every single pro player. Alex Valle, Sonic Fox, they all just line up to just beat me. Julio, everybody that was there killed me. LPN, everyone, right? LPN beat me online. And I took L's to all these dudes. Couldn't even take a game off these dudes. But it was because I understood my limitations and I knew I wouldn't be able to access the deeper layers of this game. And they did. And that's what they played. They weren't playing to have fun. They weren't playing for the sake of just playing. They were just playing the fundamentals of the game, the mechanics of the game, something that I didn't understand. Do I believe Daigo was playing for fun? Yes, for sure. Do I think he was there to seriously just compete as if I was this top pro player and he needed to play the mechanics? No. And he stepped up off the accelerator, not because he was a terrible player, but he's like, I'm just going to play fun. And then there were certain moments where he did lean into playing the mechanics, right? And I couldn't stop it, right? And my response to it was just play wild. And when you play wild against structure, you might have an advantage. But fully understanding that Daigo has an understanding of the mechanics of this game. And if he really, really wanted to lean into these mechanics, he's unbeatable. That whole lesson, that whole story, is when you look at the society in which we live in, and under the circumstances and the conditions, you're faced with a question, and this is a question that I pose to you: are you playing the metaphor, or are you playing the mechanics? Are you playing the fundamentals? Right? When you're playing the metaphor against other people who are playing the metaphor, it's a roll of the dice. Who's going to win? You might win 100 times over. They might win 100 times over. But I guarantee you that if you play the metaphor versus somebody that's playing the mechanics and the fundamentals, you'll never win. Ever. Right? There's some moments you might take a game, but you're not going to win a set. Right? You're not going to win a best out of 5. You're not going to win in playoffs. Right? You might get some crazy points. You might back this dude into a corner, he or she into a corner, but I guarantee you that you're not going to win the whole thing. You're not going to take the tournament. You're not going to make it out of pools, as they say. You're going to go 0-2. I guarantee you. Take that observation and project that onto other things. Look in the areas. Are we playing the metaphor? Or are we playing the mechanics? Do I even understand what the mechanics of this game is? Right? What does it take for me to learn the mechanics of this game? Right? What is the core fundamental properties of this game? And how do I access them? And then how do I start to learn them, master them, and then manipulate them? And the thing with people like Daigo, with Justin Wong, these video game players, K-Brad, Yipes, all these dudes with these wonderful names, Knuckle Doo, is that they can play any game, right? They can play any game, right? They can play any game. They can play any fighting game. Samurai Showdown, Mortal Kombat, Dragon Ball Z, no matter what game you put in front of them, right? They know whatever brand of game, whatever metaphor of game that you put in front of them, they know that the fundamentals and the mechanics that game is built on, that those metaphors and colors and shapes are built upon, doesn't change. Can't change. It's the fundamentals of how a game works. That's what they play. That's what you need to be playing. Right? That's what you need to be playing. The capital G game. And have fun playing, know when to play the lowercase g game, when to play the metaphor, but also have the ability to immediately play the fundamentals and play the mechanics. That's how it is in every capacity. I relate that to policing, looking at crime. If you look at crime as just breaking the law, that's the metaphor, right? That opens you up to abuse. It opens you up to authoritarianism. It opens you up to racism. It opens you up to all these things. It's just a cycle. It doesn't solve anything, right? Breaking the law, arresting someone for breaking the law does not solve the crime, right? It doesn't solve the conditions. It solves the instance, but it doesn't solve the conditions, right? But if you look at crime as a lack of services, that's when you start playing with the mechanics, right? That's when you start playing with the fundamentals, the underlying core properties and elements that lead up to this. And that's how you solve it, right? So a woman hit me yesterday in the DMs, and we had a very quick conversation, and I want to follow up with her, and I will follow up with her. She works for a company. She saw what I posted yesterday, or she tuned into the chat, and she was like, hey, I work for a company that makes non-lethal tasering options, as well as body cameras and stuff like that. And part of the goal, from what I understood briefly from her synopsis, was that the company is all about making the profession of policing less dangerous, right? To make it less of a threat, to make it less lethal, right? And that's just part of an approach to the solves, that if you have surveillance, which is one of the fundamentals and the mechanics of crime, right? Of addressing crime as part of the services. One of the lack of services is a lack of surveillance, right? On all sides of the equation, right? People do things in the dark, but if you bring light to the dark, at least they're exposed. They're less willing to do certain acts. When you place that on the police, you say, well, they killed dude in broad daylight. That's because the police station is dark. You confusing where things take place. The police station is the thing that you don't have access to, where things are covered up. The system is where these things go, right? That's the darkness. Those are the places that you can't shine a light. Those are the places that aren't surveilled. So even though a police has a body cam, right, on the scene, that's just one layer. But where the surveillance needs to be thoroughly and totally is in the system that supports the mechanics, that support the fundamentals, that support the police, that gives them the incentive to go and operate in broad daylight without any concern or consequence for their actions. That's because there's still a giant unknown at the police station, at headquarters, and at all of the systems, the prosecutorial arms, and all of those aspects, the investigative bureaus, and all these things, right? They're still in the dark. So the surveillance isn't just cameras, right? It isn't just actual visual collecting of data, right? It's a surveillance on all sides, right? It's a surveillance of the paperwork. It's a surveillance of the people who are actually enforcing the policies. It's a surveillance upon the people who are running for the different judgeships and the sheriffships and all these different people. And you need to have access to their fundamental mechanics, right? Can you do that? I don't think so. I don't believe you can. I don't believe they'll give you the access. I don't think that they want to give you the access. I think the police departments in their states, they're more social organizations for themselves, right? They feel that they're above the community and they like that status. From the lowest beat cop to the highest detective to the chief of police to the superintendent to whomever. It's a fraternity, right? And they're insular and they're internal and they walk around with a certain sense of I'm better than you, for sure. So you're not gonna solve that, right? You're not gonna solve 1,000 years of fraternity. You're not gonna solve that. You're not gonna break that up, right? There's no laws you can pass. There's no start giving police officers the electric chair. It's not gonna happen. There's police officers on death row, right? There's police officers in prison for the rest of their lives, right? It doesn't stop what's happening now because that's not the fix. Because you're playing the metaphor. You're not playing with the mechanics. The mechanics are to change. And I made this comment to her where she said, they're not trying to put police out of business or policing out of business. And I responded, I said, well, I'm not trying to put policing out of business. I'm trying to put police out of business, the lowercase police out of business. And the reason and doing that entrepreneurially by just creating a system that outdoes what they do, that eliminates crime, because it looks at crime as a lack of services, not more police, a lack of services, right? And how do you address it from that angle? Because obviously they're not, right? So the way that you attack the problem is you don't play the metaphor. You start playing with the mechanics. You start playing with the mechanics of crime. You start playing with where does it come from, right? Not what do I do with it after it's done, which is the difference. Daigo's not playing Street Fighter. He's not playing the game that Capcom made for them and gave to them. He's not playing that. He's playing game mechanics. That's what he is. He's playing game mechanics. He's playing with frame data. He's not playing with the color of this character engages me. That's what the police are doing. We're just gonna, this dude broke the law, so we're gonna put a process together and there's a whole, solve his problem, right? If this dude is a forger, solve his problem. Like, yo, what's going on? Why are you forging this check? What's happening? Is it out of greed? Is it out of boredom? Let's get to the bottom line of what this is. And if it's something that we can solve, let's solve it so you don't ever have to do this again. And then we can use you as a case study to go out and solve it for other people. Because putting you in prison's not going to do nothing. It's not going to do nothing with forgery. Stop trying to solve criminals and solve the crime. Yeah? Stop trying to solve criminals because you're not going to do it. Solve crime. And that was my piece to her. So I'm developing that conversation with her and hopefully to get a better understanding of what are some of these other alternative methods that people are approaching to really access and see since I have the leverage to do so, I have the celebrity to do so, and I'm somewhat of a good guy and somewhat trustworthy, and I kind of know what I'm talking about. I love to have these conversations with alternative models, even people working within the police system, people working outside of the police system, and that's what I'm doing, right? From the follow up from yesterday, and I have no issue with the police, but you're irrelevant to me now, right? The system has proven itself to be irrelevant to the affairs of black people in America, right? It's irrelevant to the affairs of just people who are trying to lead and live a better life in the face of a lack of services, right? Where services get politicized to the point where people are ashamed to accept it, and it empowers other people to shame other people based on some stupid sense of their understanding of religion and politics, to shame people into not wanting to lead a better life or to take some advantage of some type of program and then strip those programs of any financing and funding, right? And then get upset when we burn your community to the ground. What'd you expect? Get upset when somebody snatches your purse, right? Get upset when somebody steals your credit card number. Like, what did you expect would happen? Right? Build the projects, but don't fund them. Build the projects, but don't manage them. What'd you expect was going to happen? Remove the leadership from the communities. What'd you expect was going to happen? You created the crime. Police create crime. So we're clear on that. You create it. It's got to stop. So that's what I'm doing, developing those conversations, and I implore you to do the same. To have a fuller, better understanding of the processes of the system that we're currently in, not to change it, but to beat it, to compete with it, to build an alternative system, right? And not alternative as a lower step down, alternative as a higher step that does what they do better, right? To make them obsolete, to build a better mousetrap, which solves the issue and doesn't just doesn't just police the issue. And it's possible, right? We're smart, you're smart, we're intelligent, we're capable, we got the capacity and the capability, and it's just a thought. The process is just thought. This leads me into strategic exodus. Yeah. Strategic exodus comes from, there's a ton of, I don't know if some of you might be in the military. Some of you maybe have access to those levels of, and there's levels to it. A lot of the military isn't just the front end. It's not just the metaphors. It's not just the guns and the bombs. That stuff is there for sure. But it's a lot of support. And even when you go from the support, so there's a lot of engineering, there's mechanics, there's CBs, there's all these layers, right? That support those initiatives, right? Because everybody in the military isn't going to be on the front line shooting a gun, right? There's chefs and all kinds of craziness. And as you go down deeper into another layer of the military, there is a lot of planning. So there's laboratories, right? There's a lot of research that occurs. There's literally laboratories. So there's like the Army laboratory or the Marine Combat Laboratory or something like DARPA to an extension. But where these labs that they have, they're all about theory, right? They're all about assessing a problem in the world, whether it be, whether it be a humanitarian problem, whether it be a combat problem, whether it be a communications problem, whatever it is. They have these labs where they sit and they just theorize, right? And set up models. And it could be computer models. It could be video games, literally video games, right? They'll build video games to dress down or follow through with a certain theory. And they're on record. Some of it's public information, some of it's not. But there's one particular program that came out of the Office of the Navy. And it's the Naval Research Lab or something like that. I ain't got the specific names of the piece. But basically what it was that the Marines had a problem where the Marines were kind of lacking in one particular aspect of, kind of their combat profile, right? And it's basically how far are we, or how close are we to kind of like homegrown guerrilla kind of networks where people are able to build defenses up or offensive measures against certain Marines or certain capacities in certain aspects of the kind of the Marine structure, right? So maybe a combat unit or something like that. How susceptible are they to people being able to just build things based off stuff that they can get offline, right? So how is it that people are able to go online, go on Amazon? Are people able to go on, and basically, if people are our opponents able to source material from the internet and be able to build effective offensive or defensive kind of capabilities to against our program, and will we be able to counteract and survive? And so the Marines reached out to the Navy, this particular research department of the Navy, and they assessed the problem. They took the Marines issue and they did this whole program, and they said basically, yes, it is possible for the average, there is enough existence of material in just the general commercial space that the average citizen has access to legally, where they're able to build certain components and get it up to a level in a certain state, depending on the amount of organization and the support that they have behind it. They are able to access and build these things, which could put you at a, if not necessarily a disadvantage, will definitely make it harder for you in certain missions if people chose to go down that route. And the name of the program was called Commercial Hunter. And the program that the Navy set up, and they did this on behalf of the Marines, right? So the Navy Research Center on behalf of the Marines was like, okay, we'll go do this research for you. We'll go and build a program and pilot and test it. And they went out and actually just started to recruit different folks from different walks of life, right? The average people, people from certain industries, the entertainment industry, from this and this, because the Navy, for them to really roll out this program, they was like, you're going to need a certain level of personnel at a certain caliber with certain capacities, right, that exist in the civilian space. And so let's recruit people like that. Let's recruit people who are actually have dissenting programs, like that are actually activists, right? That are actually people who could be considered to be counter, not necessarily counterterrorism. It won't go to that extent, but people that are actually countercultural, right? That actually are probably anarchists, like people that actually have a certain drive, that would be interested, if given a certain set of circumstances, would actually apply this type of methodology. Because what the Navy didn't want, they didn't want people to fake it. They wanted like people who actually had these beliefs, right? Who would actually do it, right? In a safe capacity, but they wanted the real deal. They didn't want somebody pretending to be like this countercultural dude. They wanted like a countercultural entity to actually go through the processes of this. And so they gathered all these people together and they set this program up. And it was like, hey, can you do this? And they were like, yeah. And they went and did it. And the Navy took all of that research and all of the consequences, and they built a report and they sent it back to the Marines. And it was like, hey, look, this is possible. This is definitely possible. Here's what you can do. Here's what we have done. Here's potentially what we have seen. Here's the people that we recruited who had the capacity to actually do it. And yes, we were able to pull all of these elements from the civilian population and from just the general commercial, just Amazon or Alibaba. We were able to source all of these materials and not necessarily build this stuff, but if we really wanted to, we could build all this stuff and it could become a threat to you in a certain battle space, right? In a certain battle box. And the level of, and then they put out a report. The report went public because they were dealing with the public. And so the Navy, they just made the report public, right? And part of that, doing that, I think, was because they were letting people know who were potentially these domestic terrorist units or revolutionaries of a certain extent or whoever. Like, we've already done it. We've already researched it. We understand it. If you try and build a bomb on the internet, we already know how to do it. We know how you're going to do it. We know your limitations, and we're going to come kill you, right? So don't get it confused. We've already figured this out. We've spent a ton of money and resources in getting it done. We've practiced it. We tested it. We field tested it. And not only that, what we didn't show you was our response mechanism. So we can show you what we did, but we're not going to show you how we respond to it. But just know, we know. Wink, wink. And that level of thinking and thought and process isn't just for battle space things. It could be for humanitarian things. It could be for all types of other stuff. But that idea and that approach to theory, testing, having a goal, having a very specific problem, and then what are the solves, right? And where do you pull those solves from? As it deals with, if it deals with a civilian capacity, if it deals with something that's out of the military, then you pull people from that space and you get them to do the theory and the work and the thinking, because those are the people that need to apply it and affect it, right? And that's what strategic exodus for me is. It's what can we do first as people in this country, as black people in this country. What if we could, what does it mean to leave this place, right? What does it look like to be in a state where there's a pandemic, an actual pandemic? This isn't a test. The majority of people that are contracting and dying, the most susceptible population is black people, people of color. On the policing side, the rate of black people being killed, literally killed by the police, is ridiculous. Innocent, unarmed people. Ridiculous. Just the social aspects. A white woman in New York City, one of the most diverse cities in the world, threatens a man who is a bird watcher, graduate of Harvard, editor of comic books, in the park watching birds. Not a threat to anyone. Threatens him with basically death, the threat of death. So even the casual citizen of America has an understanding that at any given time, they can feign danger when it's a black person, and that they know that the system will respond overly aggressively to the point where this person can be killed, can be taken from this planet by just getting you or alerting you to follow the laws of the land. That's all he was doing. Your dog is dangerous, right? Dogs can be triggered. They bark at each other just sporadically, right? If it was a kid here, who knows what could happen with that dog? That's why they have leash laws. Leash your dog. And that leads to, I'm going to tell the police that an African-American man is threatening my life. So they can show up guns a-blazing, right? And we'll look at the damsel in distress syndrome. That's the state of affairs that we're in today in America. That is what it is. That's what it looks like. The chances that the physical confrontation with the average black American, with a police or even a racist white person, are actually very slim on you, me, coming into contact with that level of potential for death or that potential for confrontation is somewhat slim, right? It's not like 100%. It's not like guaranteed every time you walk outside, you're going to bump into a racist or a cop going to pull you over. We're not operating those numbers. But here's the kicker. That doesn't matter, because we're so united as a people under crisis in our state that you don't need to do it to all of us for all of us to feel the effects of it. People are scared. People are angry. People are traumatized. People are tired, right? Because of what was done to one black person. The entire community is expressing feelings, visceral, You can feel it in your stomach. You can feel it when you go to sleep. You feel it when you look at your kids. You feel it when you look at your grandfather or your grandmother who, if they catch coronavirus, the chances are that they're going to die, right? It's that visceral, right? Where it is almost as if you have already done it to us because we're so connected and united. We're not organized, but we're united, right? There's a stream of empathy and a stream of understanding and a stream of cognition that runs through us as a people that when you touch one of us, it touches all of us, right? We're not separated. That's why you see every single celebrity, every single basketball player, I've seen even black dudes who I know are just super right-wing conservative jerks, but they're black. The way they're articulating their response to this is in line with, this is fucking fucked up. Right? Even if they want to spin it and say, well, the brother could have did this and he could have did that. But no matter what, he didn't deserve to die. Right? So people feel it. So under that, the response is, for some people, let's go protest. Let's go try and change the laws. Let's go try and so I'm just positing as an option. Let's leave. Right? Let's strategically leave. Let's look at America as our summer home. Right? As our winter home. Right? As this is a place that we built for free. We've always been left out of the fruits of our labors. And fast forward to today, every aspect of this system treats us as if we're worthless. Now, I know we're not worthless. I know we have wealth and value and potential and intelligence and capacity, but the system doesn't recognize that. It refuses to, right? You look at every political situation, it's all white. You look at every single corporate situation, the majority of it is all white. It's a white perspective, even though we're a minority in this country, but it's still like 40 million of us. And we get continuously treated, from academia to politics to social culture, right? We get the shit end of the stick every time, right? And so it becomes, what does it look like to leave, right? What does it look like to go? What does it look like to recognize that this place needs to be looked at as just an Airbnb? And where we really live and where we really add value and where we're really appreciated is somewhere else. I don't know where that place is. Some people say it's Africa. Might be. I don't know. Some people say it's Canada. I don't know. Some people say let's just take over a state. Let's just all move to one state, right? And let's just by mass take that state over, right? Some people say, I don't want to leave. Some people say Asia. Some people say this. Some people say that. Some people say, let's just be Bedouins, right? Let's just be migratory. Let's be Berbers. Bedouins is the better term, right? Let's just be migratory. Let's just move from place to place, right? Add value where we go, extract value, reciprocate value, right? Stay there for a time and just move on to the next place and add value, extract value, replace, learn, study, right? Infiltrate the culture, apply something to it, learn something from it, and then move somewhere else, right? And become these kind of nomads of the world, right? Settling wherever we settle, but wherever we settle, we're going to make it better, right? We're going to appreciate it. We're going to make it a better place. We're going to make it better than where it was. We're going to go to a place that's in disarray, that's destroyed, right? We're going to go to a place that's polluted. We're going to go to a place that's impoverished. And we're going to expend and devote our energy into building that place up just because. That's what we do, right? by our nature, we're constantly combining. We're not an enemy to the world. White people cool because we're not the enemy. Because we don't want to be the enemy. We don't need to be the enemy. But we not, because that's not reciprocated. Right? The system, it tells us every day that you're the enemy. Police presence, you're an enemy. Ku Klux Klan, you're an enemy. Right? White nationalists, you're an enemy. Donald Trump, you're the enemy. Right? Political system, you're an enemy. Right? Some of them don't say it like, oh, black people are my enemy. But what they will say is, hey, that welfare program, that's my enemy. Who's all attached to that welfare program? Oh, all those people? I'm not against them. I'm just against the program. That means you're against them. Right? You don't want to prosecute these cops for this crime, even at the lowest level, regardless of the trauma that these agents cause in the communities, just by their presence. You don't even want to remove them. You want to back up their stories and give them the benefit of the doubt. No matter that just their simple appearance in the neighborhood causes trauma, causes people to second guess going outside, causes people to tense up, gives people all type of psychosomatic situations and tension, depression, and fear. But you with them? What about us? They don't give a fuck. So that's the mentality. What does it look like to leave? Right? What does it look like to leave? What does it look like to leave? And that's kind of what strategic exodus is. Not just leaving on some, I'm out of here. But what does it look like to say, I'm looking at America not as my home. I'm looking at America as my Airbnb. This is just my vacation spot, right? But my home is this, because the vacation spot gives you certain benefits and values. Vacation spots are for like luxuries, right? Vacation spots are where you go get drunk, you get high, you eat a bunch of terrible food, you experience some things, you get a suntan. It's a release. But your home is where you do your work, right? You go add value, you go get appreciated, you create, you do X, Y, Z, right? And this place is just a release valve, right? But our release valve is stress. Our vacation home is a fucking war zone. It's a mental war zone, right? If we're not dying physically, it's a mental war zone. It's a spiritual war zone. It's a health war zone, right? Our health is trash. Our food is trash. The food that we eat is trash, right? Like, it's almost like you're just on vacation constantly. Eat this. It tastes good, right? It's like, no, I need a vacation from that. I need to eat something that's healthy. I need this. But, all we got is this, right? So on every level, it's breaking us down. And we're seeing the results. Coronavirus exposed it. We're the most susceptible group to catching and dying from coronavirus. Because of that, because of vitamin D deficiency, because of comorbidities, because of underlying conditions, which you can trace directly back to diet, stress, hypertension. It's all social, political, all of that. The constant struggle and fear, the underappreciation, the valuelessness. If you don't value you, what you gonna get? A value meal.